Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Bundesliga Show. Obviously, reviewing Matchday 19 of the Bundesliga. Another good weekend of action and plenty to talk about. Before we dive in, Mark, you all right over there in Germany? Still kind of being nailed down by the Bavarian state government?
Yeah, still no football to attend, unfortunately, live anyway. I mean, obviously you can watch a lot of Bundesliga, yeah, but we don't have a lockdown. But yeah, I mean, the rules are kind of getting stricter and stricter. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to watching some football. I know we've had a lot of requests as well that people want me to do some vlogs and things of the games, which I'd love to do. But obviously it's been well over a year, going on 2 years since we could properly go to football games over here now. So yeah, just looking forward to hopefully getting back into it before too long.
Good stuff. Unfortunately, a bit of a bad weekend for both of our teams, actually, from a German perspective. Unfortunately, Nuremberg suffering the sight of Bundesliga, and my boys not having a great weekend. But anyway, before we get too distracted with such tales of woe, of course, we're going to crack on with the show in a second. We are indeed in partnership with Bundesliga Boxes this season. Me and Mark, for the second week in a row, actually, are both sporting our Tasmania numbers, actually. So, very fetchingly, the home and away strip, just one of the many shirts that you can end up with if you get yourself a Bundesliga box. They are mystery, authentic German t-shirts. So go check them out on Twitter or find them online, and you'll get yourself a brilliant batch. And actually stay tuned, because we will be doing another giveaway with Bundesliga Boxes very, very soon. So obviously keep your eyes peeled on Twitter, and we'll probably drop an announcement of that onto YouTube as well if you don't have Twitter, so you don't miss out and have another chance to win some brilliant products. And of course, if you do like the video and like our content, please do drop us a thumbs up. Let us know how we're getting on. Comment on the video with your opinions and thoughts about what we're talking about. Whether it's to do with any of the games and maybe something to do with the talking points as well. And join us live. If you're over on Twitter, come over and join us live on YouTube, and we can, get interactive with all of you. And of course, please do subscribe. Really wanting to push on to the magic 400 number. It might not be much for some people, but every little helps for us, and we really want to push on the channel this season. So without further delay, Mark, over to you for some scores on the doors.
Yeah, so as you can see at the bottom of your screens, just let me take off that. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. So, we started on Friday night with, Dortmund managed to put the pressure on, didn't they, with a really impressive 5-1 win over, admittedly injury-stricken Freiburg, which we'll talk a bit more about later. Yeah, Wolfsburg and Hertha didn't do themselves any favours by playing out a pretty drab 0-0. Yeah, Union boosting their European hopes with a 2-1 win over Champions League rivals Hoffenheim. Yeah, RB Leipzig got their first away win of the season in Stuttgart, who now drop into the bottom two, unfortunately for Rory and his boys. Mainz continue their strong home form with a 1-0 win over Bochum. Then, FC Bayern Munich, the leaders, got an impressive 4-0 win in Cologne. Leverkusen in the late kickoff on Saturday evening got a very good 2-1 win over Bayern's previous conquerors, Gladbach. Then moving on to Sunday, we ended with two entertaining draws, I would say, between Augsburg and Frankfurt, which finished 1-1. And then the battle of the bottom two, well, it was at the time, it isn't at the moment, but ended in a 2-2 draw between Bielefeld and Greuther Fürth. So, another entertaining weekend, wasn't it, indeed? As always, really, in the Bundesliga. We seem to say that every week, but, pretty much no weekend disappoints, really, at this level of football, does it? So, but we're going to go straight on to the featured four, which is obviously the four games that we consider to be the best. Again, it's always hard to pick the top four, really, because there's always so many, usually at least 5, 6, 7 entertaining games that we could go into more detail. But, we have picked our four for the week. So, starting off in fourth place, it was that entertaining game on the Saturday evening. I think we predicted this one to be probably more goals than what there actually were. But, I mean, I would say it was, in terms of entertainment, it was a game of two halves, really. I would say the first half was pretty lackluster, which surprised a few because, to be honest, I'd given a lot of people tips betting tips to stick on the over goals in this one.
Yeah.
I told a lot of people over 2.5, over 3.5, over 4.5, and even over 5.5 because I was that confident. But
yeah,
I mean, if you look at the XGs, obviously it finished Leverkusen incredibly got 6.2 XGs, which is obviously expected goals for those of you that don't know. Which for me, I think is in all the time they've been doing that stat, which has been 3 or 4 years now. I think it's the highest I've ever seen. That over 6 goals XGs, Although I've got to mention that it does differ depending on the calculator. According to the Bundesliga website, it was only 5.2, but according to the DAZN statistics, which show a lot of the Bundesliga games over here in Germany, it was 6.2. So yeah, I mean, whatever it was a high number. But obviously, Leverkusen managed to get the win, didn't they? Despite having the depleted defence, really, it was an impressive performance from Leverkusen, backing up a decent point last week at home to Union Berlin. Obviously, for Gladbach, disappointing after that famous win in Munich last week. For me, they were very much second best, especially in the second half. The first half, I think they did okay. I think Breel and Bolo did well fighting to win the ball quite early on in the game. And I think it was Florian Neuhaus who smashed a shot. Well, I would say it was pretty much straight at Herdatsky, but it was still a decent save from him with his right arm. Yeah, I think Diaby, also the super fast Diaby, almost got him beyond Sommer, but Sommer, who actually had a brilliant match in this game, like one of the unbelievable performances really in net, which we'll talk a bit more about later. But yeah, great performance from Sommer. But yeah, obviously in the second half, Rory, the game turned against the home side a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And yeah, I agree. As a game of two halves. First half was pretty quiet. Gladbach, were playing quite deep and just trying to counter on the break and use Mbolo's strength and pace to try and create problems, which he did to a degree, which didn't get much of the ball, so he did his best that he could do. Then second half, obviously it all turned on the quite soft penalty, really, wasn't it? And a bit of a nightmare start for the debutants signed from Union Berlin, I believe. It was Marvin Friedrich. Friedrich, yeah. So he gave away a penalty to which Patrick Schick stepped up, and it was brilliantly saved by Sommer, which led to a corner, which unfortunately the resulting corner led to a goal. Andrik stealing in right basically in the middle of the goal to volley home from close range. So good delivery, but poor defending, really. After you've saved the penalty, you need to be really switched on, of course. You thought you'd be able to defend that set piece. So that was disappointing from a Gladbach point of view. And yeah, it was very much mostly dominated by Leverkusen 2-0. And you thought it would be game over when Patrick Schick was adjudged to be the one who scored, kind of bundling in a good free kick with about 15 minutes to go. The result then looked in doubt because Elvedi managed to bundle in a goal from a corner. So that's 2-1 with a few minutes left, about 7 or 8 minutes left. And then you thought the game would be wrapped up as Florian Wirtz this time was fouled in the penalty area, leading to yet another one. And they changed penalty takers, which is always a weird one when you get 2 penalties in one game, particularly if you missed the first one. So they decided to change Patrick Schick. Oddly, not confident enough to take another one, considering the amount of goals he scored. I know missing a penalty does, hit a player's confidence, but would have thought he would have gone again. Demirbay went the other way, and Sommer saved again. So yeah, as you mentioned, Sommer very unlucky to be on the losing side. He was outstanding and showing his class. So that was a bit of a shame for them, though they weren't able to pick up the same kind of motivation or form that they had last week. Leverkusen, very much so the dominant team. I thought they definitely deserved the win, but maybe they'll have to practice a little bit on pens this week in training to make sure that they don't miss any more opportunities, because of course that could have cost them 2 points, 3 points, whatever you want to call it, which ended up being a really important one, because as a result of their win, they now jumped all the way back up into third in our very, very tightly congested kind of 3rd to 9th place in the league table.
Yeah, I think this was a game that kind of summed up Leverkusen for me in many ways, because they were absolutely brilliant at points. I mean, for me, Leverkusen are one of the great footballing teams of the Bundesliga. I mean, to watch them, you can't take your eyes off the games when Leverkusen are playing. Like, they're so fast going forward, and they've got so many skillful players. You know, Diaby, Schick, Fürth, he was kind of coming back into his best form, I think, now after he kind of faded off towards the end of 2021, but he's been good the last 2 weeks. But they're never comfortable in games, are they? Like, the game management is just kind of non-existent, really, for Leverkusen. And this has been a problem for a number of years now, really. I mean, obviously, the Peter Boss days, it was the same, and nowadays under Sione, it's the same, really. You know, you just think, you know, this is a side that could really push for, like, even titles, really, but just that game management isn't there, is it? And you saw it again. Obviously, they did get the win here, but as Rory said, missing 2 penalties, giving away a very scrappy goal, really, to Elvedi, which should have been dealt with a lot better from the corner, really, in a game where Gladbach really probably didn't do that much to deserve a goal in the game. But yeah, obviously, still a great win for Leverkusen, don't get me wrong, but if they want to improve, it's just got to be that game management, you know. And I think they have made some good signings, obviously, last summer. Andrich, also from Union Berlin. Ironically, Union probably sold the 2 best players from last season. You know, Andrich to Leverkusen, and then Friedrich to Gladbach. You know, so both of those 2 are on show today. But yeah, I think good signing for Gladbach in Friedrich. But yeah, they've just got to. I think with Gladbach, they've just got to learn how to kind of dominate games a bit more. They're not getting enough possession in some games, and they're like trying to play on the break, but that's not really what you'd expect from a Gladbach side, really. You know? Especially against the better teams, not so much against some of the bottom half sides, you know, but against the better teams, they don't seem to get enough possession in games, and they seem to get overrun a little bit in midfield this season, which is surprising somewhat because they've got quality players in there. But yeah, you know, good win for Leverkusen. For Gladbach, I guess it's back to the drawing board. You know, they got to come back again next week and try and get back to winning ways. But yeah, moving on to game 3. I mean, this was a game, I think I tipped Cologne to win this game, didn't I? I was so confident for them before it, but I should have known better. You know, whenever Bayern Munich lose a game of football, they always smash the opponent that they play next, don't they? Let's be honest. And it was no difference in this game in Cologne. But I mean, yeah, early on, I guess in some ways they did get a few refereeing decisions that went their way, or a few kind of like tight ones. I mean, the first goal came after 9 minutes, didn't it? And it was actually Müller who played a really nice ball into Lewandowski, and he finished, but he looked way offside to me. When I first saw it, I thought there's no way this can be onside, you know. But obviously it went to the VAR, and the referee decided it was onside, and the goal was given. So that was already 1-0. Then, you know, I think Cologne were pressing very well from the front, obviously led by the brilliant Baumgart. You know, he was shouting like crazy. You could hear, because obviously there were barely any fans in the stadium due to COVID restrictions. You could hear Baumgart really, really shouting at his players and how much he gets into them and pushes them to kind of press from the front, you know. And they did create a half chance, which forced a good save from Neuer from the Modeste header. I think he was just about offside in the end, but it was still a good move. But then, yeah, for me, probably the man of the match in the game, actually. I thought Tolizo was absolutely brilliant. And, yeah, brilliant performance from him. He doesn't always turn up, does he? But this was one of his better games for sure. And he blasted an absolutely brilliant strike into the top corner, really, from the edge of the area to make it 2-0 from another Müller assist, actually, the assist king, yet again, banging another couple of assists in. Then I think, yeah, again, in the first half, it looked as though Cologne had got back into it, didn't it, through Mark Uth. And again, it's just one of those, isn't it? Bayern have the decision that just goes their way, but Cologne, unfortunately, they were correct decisions, don't get me wrong. I'm not claiming for a minute that they weren't, but it's millimetres in it, do you know what I mean? It's millimetres. It goes from being 2-0 to what could have been 1-1 if it was the other way around, you know. But yeah, I think second half, Rory, I think Bayern just cruised through it, really, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. I think you quite rightly point out 2 key points or you know, periods of time in the game. Obviously, the early goal for Lewandowski goes for them, and the potential goal back for Mark Uth is, you know, it's millimeters in it, as you say, in the tight VAR calls. But yeah, by the definition of the laws that we work to, or that the, you know, Bundesliga work to, they were right. And often that when you're at the top of the league and you're used to winning it, so it just somehow always goes for you, doesn't it? It's just the way of things. So yeah, if it goes back to 2-1, different game, I reckon. And, it gives the home side a bit of impetus to really push on in the second half. But 2-0 down at half time was always going to be hard work for them. And credit to them that, they came out and they were brave again. I think Duda had a half decent chance. And I think the keeper again, Schwabe, who's still in for Timo Horn, is doing a good job despite conceding 4 goals. Kept out Lewandowski on a good few occasions, stopped him on a one-on-one chance. So, Koln did their best, but they were ultimately just outclassed, really. And when you've got people like, Leroy Sané to bring off the bench as Bayern, obviously, kind of half recovered from this COVID outbreak. Obviously, Tolisso was back, as you mentioned, Mark, probably man of the match. Neuer was back in net. So big players to bring back into a squad. And Sané set up Lewandowski for a couple of kind of carbon copy goals for 3 and 4 for him to score. What was it? His 300th now Bundesliga goal. Bayern have now scored in a record 66 games in a row in the Bundesliga, which is also a record, I think. So yeah, they're showing no signs of slowing down. They're posting a harsh pace at the top of the league, which is nigh on impossible to keep up with. And we berate and give Dortmund a bit of stick here and there, don't we, on this show, particularly defensive wise. But the fact that they're only 6 points behind, and I know 6 points is a half decent amount of points, they're doing okay. But we'll talk about Dortmund in a little bit. But yeah, Bayern look imperious. It looked like a tricky game, didn't it, really? And they dealt with it incredibly smartly. Of course, we've got the Pokal midweek, but Bayern won't be involved, so they'll be resting up, getting players back from COVID, getting players back fitter. I haven't actually looked ahead at the fixtures yet, so I'm not sure who they're playing this weekend coming, but whoever it is.
This weekend.
Who have they got?
Hertha Berlin away from home.
Well, yeah, so yeah, it will be hard, hard graft for Hertha, I'm sure, because, Bayern have done as they always do and bounced back impressively. So yeah, very good win for them. Yeah,
absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So yeah, just before we go on to the second game, we need to cover something else, Rory.
Yeah, we do. Which was introduced for the first time last week. So we thought we'd just kind of break up our featured 4 every week to kind of go from the more serious analytical stuff to something a bit more fun. So last week we introduced our first ever Bundesliga Glossary part of the show. So we're just having a bit of fun with it and kind of picking out some Bundesliga terminology and phrases that are often used by our counterparts in the league and kind of just throwing them over to you, letting you kind of learn them if you want to use them with your friends or your family, impress people, or if you just want to learn a few phrases. It's all a bit of fun, and let us know if you enjoy them. We had our first one last week, which of course was the letter A. So we're now moving on to the letter B, and our phrase for this week is going to be Bananenflanke or flanke, which is probably a bit better pronunciation. So that is basically, it's a really nice word, actually. I like this one. And it means effectively like kind of a curling, outswinging or in-swinging cross, or effectively a banana ball. So Mark, you'll have more knowledge of this. So that again is like the first week is very literal translation, basically, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Again, it's another one of those that's kind of 2 words that's put together to make one word, So again, bananen, which again is like basically the same as the English banana, it just means like the plural for bananas, or like bananas is more like really. And then flanke is like the word for like a cross, It's I guess it comes from the word. That's probably why in English we call the word flank. Sometimes we call the side the flank.
Flanks, yeah.
You've got to remember there are a lot of similarities between German and English as well, because like English comes from it's heavily influenced by German as well. So that's why, like if any of you guys learn German or know any German, you'll know there's kind of a lot of similar words really. So but it literally means like banana cross basically. Yeah. So it's which is a commonly used phrase, for that kind of like if you listen to any games like in German, which is quite a good experience, by the way, for any of you guys interested in that. But you will hear these kind of terms used a lot on the German commentary. So good one.
Good stuff. Well, I mean, I have to say, in the very short time of doing this, that's definitely my favourite of the two so far.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit easier to pronounce as well. So obviously, let us know as time goes on when we do these what your favourite one is, which one you might hear more often if you do hear it, or what one you've maybe been able to drop into conversation here and there. So yes, our Bundesliga Glossary letter B this week is Bananenflanke. So good stuff. Enjoyed learning about that. As I eventually try and find some time to learn or start learning German, I'll hopefully start to learn a little bit more about the phrases as well. So our first or second one done and dusted. So back over to you, Mark. Let's finish the countdown.
Yeah, who knows, Rory? In a year or two, we might be able to do the show in half in German as well. Who knows? Wow. That'd be an interesting one, wouldn't it? Yeah, provide live translations. Okay, so moving on with our featured four. I mean, this was one that who would have thought that this one could have made the featured four, really, But that is what the Bundesliga is all about, really, isn't it? I mean, I always say to you, Rory, like we often talk about the weekends preceding. I always say you can't watch a bad game in the Bundesliga, Yeah. And I mean, this was a classic example. I mean, Bielefeld went into the game in 17th place, although obviously they had taken 7 points from the previous 3 before kickoff, and Fürth were rock bottom, although again, they'd only lost 1 in 4 before this game, which is now 1 in 5. So fair play to them, Admittedly, 3 of those games have been draws, but, they deserve a lot of credit really for like turning the season round. And even though they're going to get relegated, they know that. But I mean, they've made it respectable, and they've earned the respect of the Bundesliga and the pundits alike, really, in the last 5 or 6 games, I would say.
Definitely.
But anyway, moving on to the analysis. I mean, I think the interesting thing in terms of the starting lineup was the fact that Yanni Serra, again, after coming in for the last 2 games, was once again booted onto the sideline, wasn't he? He just doesn't seem to be liked at all in that team, does he? Because I always think he looks okay. I mean, he doesn't get bags of goals, but he causes problems for me. Whenever I see them. But he was actually dropped for Lasme as well. I guess because he got the equaliser last week against Freiburg. But it still surprised me a little bit, to be honest, to see him line up ahead of good old Yanni Serra, Rory's favourite. And also the fact that we've not been seeing Robin Hack at all as well. Like, what's happened to him? Nuremberg's finest, the darling of Nuremberg, can't get a game for Bielefeld. I think Nuremberg need to call the manager up and see if he's available for a transfer, to be honest, because he's a cracking player, really. He's such a good player. Like, I watched him a lot of times for Nuremberg, and he was like outstanding for them. I thought he'd do a lot more for Bielefeld, but can't get on the team at the minute. Anyway, the game started well from that man Kruger, who's been really impressive recently. He played a really, really nice ball. And then it was that man Okugawa, wasn't it? A player that I'm really impressed with, to be honest. This was a beautiful finish, because the keeper looked favourite all the way, and he kind of side-footed it, but got that kind of like side on it, didn't he? And it looked like it was going wide, but the defenders and the keeper, it kind of went in between them and nestled in the back of the net. Only about 10 minutes on the clock at that point. It was already 1-0. So you're thinking, long afternoon for Fürth. Bielefeld are going to cruise to this. They had another couple of chances, well, again, through Kruger, forced a good save. But then straight after that save from Kurpf, I think it was. He forced a good save from the keeper. And then straight on the rebound, on around the halfway line, Leveling gets the ball. Probably the one player for Furth that you think, he's a real quality forward. And he holds up the defender really, really well, actually. And then he managed to kind of smash a shot past that Ortega, and it's already 1-1, really, from the first shot that Fürth have had, to be honest, in the game, after around 35 minutes. So after Bielefeld pretty much dominating the half, really, dominating the game, they go in at 1-1, don't they, Rory? And then, obviously, the second half is more carnage, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. I think we had some technical difficulties there for the first time ever, really. But we're back. Second half of the game was also very kind of evenly poised. I think Fürth came out and looked the most likely for a little while until they did. I kind of there's a few good chances here and there. I think Tillman tested Ortega from a free kick, and then super sub Nielsen comes on for Fürth, and then after being on the pitch for 30 seconds, got his head onto a Sagan cross, and it obviously kind of deflected off Brunner and went in to give the bottom club a surprise lead at 2-1. I think they gave the goal to Nielsen because his header probably was just about going in. And that was with 15 minutes to go. So you're thinking, wow, like, could be a huge result for Fürth. Maybe it will give them some belief. Who knows, for a miracle escape. And it was also looking good for my boy Stuttgart, because I really needed Bielefeld to lose that game in terms of the positioning in the league. And then, kind of talking of Stuttgart, former favourite of mine and even yours, Mark.
Yeah.
The man that they had to let go, probably because of because of wage demands, who's recently signed for Bielefeld, is Gonzalo Castro, the Bundesliga veteran. Ball came out to him on the edge of the area on the half volley, and he hits it clean. Amazingly quality technique. Ball goes flying. Nestles in the top corner-ish, not quite fully top corner, but great strike, beat the keeper to make it 2-2. And obviously neither team were able to go on and win it, but still an important point for Bielefeld. I think, Fürth have, picked up 2 draws in a row against teams around them, which shows that, they're not massively far off. Of course, they can't compete with the same level of quality that the Dortmunds and the Bayerns have, but they've shown that, we're not just, cannon fodder here. We know we're still here to play games, and both Bielefeld and Stuttgart would have been targeting these games saying, we have to win this, and both of them have drawn. So interesting stuff. I think Bielefeld overall will be very frustrated, especially taking an early lead. You would have thought would have given them a lot of confidence to go on and kind of take the game by the scruff of the neck. But Fürth, they were really good, actually, I thought, and fully deserving of yet another Bundesliga point to kind of push them further up the board in terms of their points, not quite in terms of positionally. But yeah, very entertaining game. Not something you might have expected between 17th and 18th place, but that, again, like you said, is why we enjoy and love the Bundesliga so much, because it's so unpredictable. Teams just, to an extent, have kind of put away the all-out attack and this kind of carnage football, which they started off the season with, and have now made themselves a lot more rigid to a certain degree and a lot harder to beat, and certainly harder to score against anyway, so that now they're in games and 2 goals can actually get them a point, whereas they were losing 6-3 and 5-2 or whatever it was. And 2 goals in theory should be at least enough in most games to get you a point or better. So they're now back in games, so hopefully we see this improvement from Fürth continue for the rest of the season. Bielefeld, they're looking like they're well in a chance of escaping relegation, whether that's via a playoff place or completely.
Yeah, obviously, Fürth, they've still not beaten that record low number of points, but I think, to be honest, they are looking like they'll probably manage to do that now, because they have been good the last few weeks. Admittedly, most of the fixtures have been against lower teams. I mean, they have played in the last 3 games, Augsburg, Stuttgart, and Bielefeld, who are the bottom 3 teams below them. So I guess you've got to bear it in, put it into some kind of, context, it's not the most perfect run in the world, because obviously they could have won a couple of those games. But yeah, for me, it's more frustration from Bielefeld, really, because I look at their squad and I think they shouldn't be in the bottom 3. I'm really starting to think it's a very good squad. I mean, we all know about Ortega, one of the best goalkeepers in the league. I think the defense is relatively solid with the likes of Lauersen and Petre. I think they're not the best, the most technical, but the solid Bundesliga defenders. And I just think they've got a lot of options through the midfield and the front. I really, really like Wimmer and Okugawa. I think those 2 could play at a higher level in the Bundesliga for me. For me, they're both mid-table level players, really, And then I think also, even through the front, Castro is a great signing, really. I mean, Stuttgart must be thinking, why did we let him go? I mean, I don't know the details, whether it could be they just couldn't agree a contract. I don't know. But I mean, they've missed him a lot. And not only does he provide quality, he is like 34, 35 now, let's be honest. But he's a player that's played at the highest level in the Bundesliga, you know, for Leverkusen, for Dortmund. And he really is a good player. And we saw that with the equaliser, didn't we? What a strike that was. But yeah, I mean, for Bielefeld, for me, it's just about Frank Kramer, the manager, just kind of finding a starting lineup that he can stick with. Because, as I say, I think he's almost got too many options, really. Like so Robin Hack can't get a game because Wimmer's been so good, you know. Mm-hmm. He's just got to find a team, you know. Because for me, this is a side that shouldn't be going down. The work they've done in the transfer market over the last 6 months has been very, very good, really. Yeah. Very, very good. And I think they've got a solid side now and they should be able to stay up. But it's just about trying to win games more often, you know, and just try and solidify themselves as a Bundesliga side. But yeah, I think things are looking good. 4 games unbeaten for them, and I think they should be able to secure the status for the Bundesliga for another year, for me anyway. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, let's go on to the game of the weekend. And yeah, it was a game of the weekend unless you're a Freiburg fan, really, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, I actually thought this was a really, really good Dortmund performance. You know, I mean, there was a bit of pressure on them coming into the Friday night game. Everyone knew they had to get the win, you know, to put the pressure on Bayern. And yeah, come 11 o'clock, Friday evening, they did manage to cut the gap to 3 points, didn't they? So they did the job. I mean, we've got to be honest. I mean, Freiburg were heavily depleted in this game, you know, especially in the back line. I mean, Upstoff started ahead of Flecken, and we know that Flecken's so important to Freiburg in net. One of the best keepers this season in the Bundesliga, and he's been missing for the last 2 games. And unironically, they've conceded 7 goals in those 2 games as well. Obviously, the captain, their leader, their best player for me, Schlotterbeck, was also missing as well. Yeah, I think what was the problem with him? Was it COVID or a knock before the game? But anyway, he was missing.
He was missing. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I think the guy who came in to replace him wasn't anywhere near the same level. But yeah, I mean, the first 2 goals were just like carbon copy headers from Meunier, both from Brandt corners from different sides, basically, weren't they? And yeah. It's very unlike Freiburg for me to concede 2 goals from headers off corners. I think, to be fair to Dortmund, they had started the game well and they created a few half chances before those 2 headers. But still, I mean, you shouldn't be conceding 2 goals from headers from the same player as well, you know. But I mean, they were Thomas Meunier's first 2 goals of the season, so fair play to him. You could tell it meant a lot, you know, because he's not always got on that well with the Dortmund fans since signing 18 months ago, has he? But for me, he has improved this season. He's been a lot better overall this season, and he deserves those 2 goals for his efforts in recent weeks. Then, yeah, it looks as though Freiburg are going to get away with a 2-0 at half-time. They've not really created much. You know, Jong had a couple of half chances, I guess, but they struggled to get going, really, for me, Freiburg, in this game. And then right on the stroke of half-time, it was that man Haaland, wasn't it? And, yeah, he obviously finished the game, basically, by putting the ball past Upstoff for 3-0, right on the stroke of half-time. And yeah, obviously by that point it was game over, and Freiburg were just playing for pride in the second half, weren't they, Rory? Really?
Yeah, a big moment in the game was making it. It was whether Freiburg could make it into half time at 2-0 or whether Dortmund could press for another one, which they did. Obviously, very good finish for Haaland after good work from Bellingham in midfield to set up his partner in crime or his good pal. But yeah, then we kind of saw a half come back on the cards when some good work by Roland Salai obviously led to a shot from himself, which was parried by Kobel kind of basically onto the penalty spot or really close in, to which Demirovic substitute was able to kind of just about get his foot onto it and make it 3-1. So you're thinking, can we see something here with half an hour to go? We know that teams can score goals against Dortmund. Certainly, we've seen that loads of times. So it might have been a few nerves here and there along the Dortmund fans, but that was eventually laid to rest after some really good work by Dahoud, actually, to set up Haaland, and he made no mistake putting it through the legs of Uphoff to make it 4-1. And yeah, of course, then it was game over. And Dahoud himself was able to add a second goal in 2 games. Nice finish actually in the box where after Nico Schultz had set him up inside the area for 5-1. So yeah, really impressive performance by Dortmund. Doing all they could to keep pace with Bayern, as I mentioned, got it down to 3 points for 24 hours or less. That's all they can do right now is just keep on grinding out results. If they can play as well as they did in this game, then fantastic. Then that will give them real confidence, because I thought that, as you mentioned, it was a really good performance by Dortmund. Made the most of a surprisingly kind of weakened Freiburg team in terms of that, regardless of who's in net or who's in defence, you always kind of expect that level of toughness with Freiburg for them to do the basics right, which is, defending set pieces better than they did, and Meunier getting on the end of a front post corner for the first one, and then the second one was a bit further deeper into the box at the back stick, more or less. Apparently, Meunier used to be a striker back in the day, or when he was a youngster, so maybe his finishing came from that. So there's a couple of good headers in fairness to him. But yeah, that was quite un-Freiburg-like, I would say. And a couple of losses in a row now for Freiburg. Will that affect their confidence? I think they've actually got my boys next. So is that an opportunity for Stuttgart to, they're playing all right, Stuttgart. I know we keep on saying that, but that would be an interesting game to see if Freiburg can bounce back. They will be at home, though. So, they'll probably target and probably put a few goals past my boys, unfortunately. But yeah, Dortmund looked very good, I'd say. That will give them a lot of confidence going forward. So very entertaining game for a Friday night. The Friday night game always seems to produce good games and lots of goals. So it was a really good start to the weekend and ends up being the game of the weekend.
Yeah, I've got to say also a credit to Kevin Schade, who came on at half-time for Freiburg. They were pretty much schooled in the first half, but I thought Schade made a really, really good impact in that second half. And he was probably, obviously he wasn't involved directly in the goal, but, he caused they did have a couple of half chances at 3-1 as well. I think Schade forced a good save from Kobel as well. And again, Dortmund similar to Leverkusen in some ways, but maybe not quite so extreme. The game management just isn't there at times, is it? And at 3-0 up and after a really, really good first half, you're just thinking, go and put. Obviously they did get 5 in the end, but there was a period probably between, 46 and 70 minutes when you did worry for them a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Because if Freiburg could have got that second, which they did have a couple of half chances, and then it could have been a long last 20 minutes for Dortmund, But we love again, just like Leverkusen we mentioned earlier, they're a great team to watch. The games are just must watch, basically. Do you know what I mean? It's there's some teams in the Bundesliga where you just can't not watch the games. Basically, they're so entertaining. You can more or less guarantee entertainment if you watch. The likes of Dortmund, Leipzig, Leverkusen, Bayern, obviously. Even some of the lower teams, the likes of Stuttgart, maybe not so much this season, but of last season. So many Mainz are entertaining, Cologne are entertaining. There's so many great teams to watch in this league, and it's what makes it my favorite league, personally, anyway. So, I guess that's the end of our featured 4. So, we have to move on to the talking point. So I'll let Rory introduce it this week.
Sure thing, yeah. So, of course, our Bundesliga Boxes talking point of the week, obviously where we take a bit of time to talk about a theme, a trending topic or whatever. And to be fair, the last few weeks or even months, a lot of our focus has been on teams rather than individuals or head coaches. I think we did one on the sacking of Van Bommel at one point, perhaps. So this time, we can talk about something that's been in the news and was news on Friday night with regards to Erling Haaland. And, of course, he gave a bit of a strange post-match interview. So we're kind of going to be asking the question whether Haaland will kind of force Dortmund's hand in order to push for a summer move and kind of look at some of the ins and outs of it and as to whether it will, and what it will affect, basically. Because if you didn't see the interview, basically Haaland said that, the club, obviously Borussia Dortmund, had been pushing or pressing him to make a decision with regards to his future and indeed his contract, whether he will extend or not. And he's just saying that I just want to play football. I'm a simple person. I just want to play football. And it was kind of met with a lot of different reactions and mixture of responses in the media and by fans alike. I think there was a lot of upset people. Which kind of came across obviously a negative impact from Haaland with regards to his relationship with the fans in the club. I'll just throw it over to you, Mark, first and foremost. What do you reckon to the interview itself? Do you think people have gone a bit over the top and maybe just kind of blown out of proportion, or do you think this is all now going to lead to something that we're going to see some big news about his future in the next few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first point we've got to remember some of the background of it. The interview was in Norwegian, first of all, so I mean, it was his native language. I think the reporter was from Norway who gave it, and then the translation was like in English,
Yeah.
And I think, so that's the first point. We don't know whether, I mean, I don't speak Norwegian. I would imagine most of the people that watch the show don't. So we don't know whether the translation was that accurate, first of all. Yeah. Yeah, and then the second thing we've got to remember, he has a history of these kind of interviews, doesn't he? I mean, I was just telling Rory before, I'm interested to watch some players' interviews just to see how they come across on camera, and I searched on YouTube for a few of his early days interviews from his days back in Salzburg, and he's borderline childish player, really. Do you know what I mean? But what we've got to remember again, on top of that, he is still, I'm not going to say he's a child at 20 years old, but he's still a very young man who's learning. Yeah. He's probably a bit raw. His ascension to the top of the sport was very, very fast as well. He was a young guy at Molde in Norway. I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's former club, actually. And then he kind of, he got that move to Salzburg, and he was only there about 6 months to a year, and then he already had the big money move to Dortmund. So, I mean, the guy came from nowhere, really, to become one of the biggest players in the world. So, let's be honest, he was obviously annoyed about something. For me, it could have been his recent form, actually, because before this game, he'd not been that good for a few weeks, actually, I would say, and he looked a bit frustrated at times against Frankfurt last week. So, I mean, he's obviously a bit cheesed off about something. He's probably a bit cheesed off about the fact that the team aren't closer to Bayern, I mean, we mentioned that but 6 points is still going to be hard for them to overturn that, It was probably promised that they were going to make a real strong title bid this year, and it could be partly to do with that. But my honest opinion is that, it's been blown out of proportion a little bit overall. Yeah, that's my overall conclusion. I don't think he didn't necessarily slay the club. He said, according to the translation, he said something like, he's been keeping quiet for the last 6 months, but the club is forcing his hand. But again, I'm not forcing his hand is maybe not the right way it was phrased. I think you'd have to ask someone who knows Norwegian well to fully translate that, because I know that often these kind of things do get lost in translation a little bit at times.
Yeah, of course. But so obviously we've kind of spoken a little bit about what it means to Haaland and from his point of view. So let's throw it back over to the Dortmund side of things. I think from their point of view, they're well entitled to be asking the question of Haaland. He's obviously a generational talent. He will be he already is probably one of the best players in the world. He's a rare player to come along, and they've obviously got this talent. I think he's in contract until 2024, the summer of. And of course, they have this release clause, which is 75 million euros roundabout, which can be activated this summer, I believe. And obviously the whole reason as to why they're asking the question is because they obviously want him to extend his stay with the club and obviously help them to achieve their goals, win titles, win the Bundesliga for the first time in a long time. And as a result of doing that, if they can extend his contract, not only do they get him for longer, they increase his value as a player. Obviously, they can get more money for him when he eventually goes, because of course he will. And then they can also maybe insert a higher release clause, because let's be honest, in the kind of saturated transfer market that we live in, 75 million euros, aka 65 million pounds, is an absolute bargain for Erling Haaland, because he is 20 years old, as you say. not even close to the peak of his powers. We've seen a lot of transfers go by in this day and age. If Harry Maguire's worth 80 million, then I dread to think how much Haaland really is worth. So do you kind of get it from Dortmund's point of view, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think they're perfectly within the right. Yeah, because obviously everyone's talking about it. I mean, probably him and Mbappe are probably the most sought after commodities in the whole of the footballing world this summer. I think all of the big clubs are just like lining up for him. Man City, possibly United, Chelsea probably will be in there. Real, Barca, PSG, Juventus. They all want a bit of him, don't they? It's like. And I think obviously from Dortmund's perspective, they want to know where they stand, because I think the ideal for them is that they probably want him to sign a contract, but still leave potentially, because they realize that, as you just said, I mean, 75 million euros is practically free for a player like him, I think his market worth is probably double, at least double that, and probably close. I mean, Neymar, what did PSG pay 200 million euros for him? Then for me, he's worth more than a player like Neymar, even in the long run, because he's younger, he's probably better built and things like that, and I think, he's probably worth, even for a Bundesliga standard, at least 150 million euros. So probably, I would imagine from their perspective, if I were them anyway, I'd ask him to sign a contract, but still say, we'll let you go for 150 million or something, And for me, I don't doubt that anyone who can afford that would pay it, basically. I don't doubt it. And I think probably from their perspective, that could be what they're thinking, they're thinking, we're going to get scammed here if he leaves for 75 mil, So perhaps they just want to. It's happened many times in football before. I think a lot of smaller teams do it, don't they? In the Premier League, for example, they ask a player to sign a contract so they can get more money from the big clubs, and it makes sense, really, ultimately, And I think Dortmund probably accept, while they will want to keep him, of course, they know that they've not got the wage structure to offer him what most of the other clubs are even close to what they can offer him. So I think they will accept that he's going to leave, but I would imagine from their perspective that they might say, sign a contract for another 4 years and then we can get double and we're all happy, basically.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Right, well, a quick question to finish this kind of talking point of the week then. So as you mentioned, maybe they'll kind of give him an ultimatum or kind of say, if you do X, Y, and Z, we'll let you go this summer anyway. But obviously they still want to get the best out of him for the last 6 months or whatever, because they've got they're still in the chance for the title race. They're in the Pokal still, which they won last year. They're in the Europa League in a strong Bundesliga kind of category, but a win in that trophy would be really good as well. So they don't want this to become a saga and it to run and run and run, and it to then affect his form, or of course then affect the team's form, and then they can drop out of the title race very quickly. They could get knocked out of the Pokal this week. Of course, they're playing. So things could go badly for Dortmund in a number of ways that quickly. So do you think, very quickly, Mark, that they're best off accepting he will go in the summer and just say, just give us 6 months of your absolute best and you can maybe win us 3 trophies or 2 trophies?
I don't know whether it's as simple as that. Yeah, I wish it was so simple, but I think obviously financially, they probably think they can get double the value from him, and obviously that's massive. First of all, for their transfer budget ahead of next year, which they've got to be thinking about, and then also about because you've got to remember, a lot of clubs in Germany, they're not as rich as clubs, because obviously we've talked about it before, the 50+1 rule means that like 51% of the club has to be owned by the fans and members. So like a prospective owner can only put like 49% in, and everything has to be passed by the fans, I would say, yes, from a footballing perspective, from our point of view, that's what we'd love to see, but in my opinion, the best scenario for Dortmund would be, if they can get him to sign a new contract and they can get double, potentially even more than double that 75 million. And if they can win a trophy on top of that, even better. But I guess from the businessmen's perspective, who are probably the ones that are pushing him, they're thinking probably more about the money at the moment.
Sure thing, good stuff. Well, it'd be very interesting to see how things develop with Haaland and with Dortmund over the next few weeks, particularly. Maybe it'll quieten down and maybe he will sign a new contract. Let's hope so, because, of course, we love Haaland. He is a generational talent and we love the Bundesliga. So the two of them together, for another season or more would be perfect. But anyway, that brings a close to this week's Bundesliga Boxes talking point of the week. So, Mark, over to you to close up this week's show.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, if you enjoyed what you saw today on our Bundesliga review show, remember to like, comment, and subscribe below. We've had another good week in the last week with regard to subscribers. We're getting more and more. We want to try and get to 500 within the next month or two. So, any viewers that are watching, just try to subscribe. And the benefits for you guys are that you'll get to see whenever our shows are going out live. So, obviously, at times in the past when I followed YouTube channels, I've seen one, forgot to subscribe, and then basically it's been lost. And I've been thinking, what was it called, that one before? The best thing to do is just subscribe, and basically you can remember us forever. We're not going anywhere. So you can get live reminders of every show we're doing. Also for the League One and League Two shows as well. Remember, here on OTB, we're not only a Bundesliga channel, we're also cover lower league English football as well, and potentially some more. So we've got other things planned in regard to European football as well. So we're going to keep expanding, and the more subs we get, the more stuff we'll be able to create. It's as simple as that, really. So and if you enjoy, also check out our Twitter @OverTheBarFB and @OverTheBarExtra. So we also do written journalism as well. I'm not going to come over to you, Rory, this time because I've done it about the last 5 shows now. But Rory also does writing. I used to do writing, but unfortunately time permitted. I don't do as many written articles now, but something I'd like to get back into in the future. And obviously our main site is otbfootball.net. So check that out for the main page and links to just about everything that we do here. So thanks again for joining us, guys. And leave your comments below, of course. We always like to hear what you guys think about our opinions and give your own opinions as well. And we'll see you again on Thursday for our preview of week 20. So see you then, guys.
Cheers all. See you then.